Welcome back to the Sleeping Grush podcast. I'm Lore Master Matt,
And I am Phelan John.
and we are happy to be back in the saddle after nearly a month's hiatus. Holy cow, how time has just flown by. It seems like yesterday we were at Adepticon, and here we are almost 2 weeks later, but we're finally back in the studio, coming to you guys with the rundown of Adepticon today and a whole lot of new stuff that we're going to talk about. So, we are so thankful that you're here and we are appreciative that you're hanging on with us. We are brought to you today, as we are every day, by Cardboard Corner Cafe. We are sitting in one of their amazing RPG rooms that is just custom put together to hold a large group privately. You can rent these by I believe it's a 2 hour block. They're beautiful. And of course, they have their amazing waffle menu. They have their amazing drinks menu. Cardboard Corner Cafe, now with two locations in Kansas City. One of the premier stops if you're going to be in Kansas City on business, or if you're here visiting, or hanging out with the DGS crew to play some games. This is the place to be. So, guys, if you're in town, support these folks. They are great. They're fantastic. I'm enjoying one of their coffees right now. Probably move on to something a little bit harder as the evening continues. So, John, it's good to hear your voice, sir.
Yeah, it's still not at the same location with Matt. I'm in a country home in Maine for another couple of weeks, but it's good to be back in the podcast.
Yeah, it is. And despite the snowmageddon that happened out there, a country home in Maine sounds like a pretty nice place to be at the moment.
Yeah, it wasn't for 2 days, but we're back in the saddle, and also we had the good fortune of the totality path of the eclipse passed right over North Central Maine. So
That's cool.
it's always you win some, you lose some, and we won that one, so it's all good.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So we're just a couple weeks off of Adepticon, and I'm just going to go ahead and apologize to our listeners now. The intention was to record a couple of podcasts there on site, and our team just got so busy that we just didn't have time to do that. And by the time Saturday rolled around and we had a couple of moments to do that, we all went to sleep. So we'd been pushing it hard for 3 days, and we went to sleep, but we are back now. We are mostly recovered and we're kind of ready to go. But today we want to talk a little bit about Adepticon and how that went. So I know, John, poor John, I feel bad for you, sir, because you kind of had to live vicariously through our posts and our communications back and forth to you while we were at the event.
So yes, and checking sales by the minute, almost as bad as when you have a Kickstarter running and you're checking your funding level every 10 seconds. I
it,
had the
it did.
I had the application up on my phone where I can check how well the booth was doing from moment to moment. And the answer is extremely well, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, it did. I mean, that went super well, and I remember the first, especially the first couple of days. You were like, "Hey, we just hit this," and "Hey, we just hit this." I was like, "John
yeah,
he is on it."
yeah. So the joke here was, we joke in the past. We've joked in the past when we've been working the booth and things have been crazy, that there will come a day when um, we'll all be on our DGS yacht, to be named later, and we will have people working for us. We'll be skyping into them to
Right.
check on how they're doing at whatever convention while we're sipping fruity drinks. And so as I was there, away from Adepticon, away from my teammates, watching them billet, from a distance. I expected any moment to get the kind of classic joke from my friends on the team that, gosh, we're having our best con ever, and John's not here. So are those linked? We, ask them to stay away from future Adepticons. And they didn't do it. I expected at any moment that one of you guys was going to pull that. And my response was going to be, I think you misunderstood who's on what side of the Skype screen at the yacht and who. So, but I didn't have to throw
Well,
that rejoinder. So,
I will have you know that that joke was passed around a couple times there. I am
yeah,
surprised as well.
yeah,
It
the
didn't
guys
make it to
laying
you.
on me correctly. Yeah. And what was not lame was the team's performance. So, we got a lot of things to talk about Adepticon, and so I've been thinking about how to ask Matt, to kind of relate them to you. I think what I want to say is we're gonna get to them all, but instead of saying like what was Matt's favorite thing or what does he think the biggest thing was, I'd like Matt's take on what he thinks. Excuse me, what he thinks the players will most remember from this Adepticon.
I think the players are going to most remember a couple things. Number one, I think they're going to remember the Azura release because that was huge. It was talked about constantly while we were there. And I also think that they are going to be remembering how huge the tournament was and what an amazing crew turned out to play in it. I Everybody that dropped by made mention of the presence of DGS there, how large it was, how many different things we had going on. But they were super excited about the Azura release, and they were super excited about the numbers that were going to be in the Adepticon tournament, which turned out to be our largest ever. And I think those two things, maybe with the caveat of just our presence and how large it had grown there, are going to be the things that players remember.
Yeah, if somebody's coming by the booth at Adepticon 2024 and has been a long time Adepticon goer, they would remember us as being the little single table out in the hallway, from 10 years ago. It's just night and day. So
Yeah, I mean, it really
that's true.
is.
So let's say just for that I was someone who was not at Adepticon, and I had been living in some remote location, completely out of touch with the world. What would you tell us about the Azura release that made it such a big deal to our fans and players?
I would relate two things. I would relate their design and their overall aesthetic just hit people in the face, just how cool the Azura were, and two, that they were single piece plastic models. Those two things were talked about continuously to me, in front of me, around me for the entire con. People just absolutely went nuts for them. They loved their look. They were anxious for more. They wanted to know about them. They were just a huge hit.
Yeah, I remember watching, like we just talked about, I was watching the stats on our the sales app, and watching, not just the the sales themselves, the dollar amount, but the things that were being sold and at what rates and who was buying what. And there were a lot of Azura starter boxes being sold. And I'm thinking in my head while I'm watching these numbers, I've loaded the truck enough. I know how many we normally take to these events. I think we either got close to selling out or did sell out. Do you know?
I don't know if we sold out, but I know that we were close because we were talking about it seriously at the end of day two, that we were going to have problems if that rate of sale continued. And I don't know that if we sold out or not. I'd
I
like to
think
know
we
that.
just touched it. I think we came within a box or two of selling out. And I could just see, Jennifer, a picture in my head, Jennifer pulling together 6 models you know, off the out of the cabinets, to sell somebody a starter set, without the box, um,
Yeah.
on Sunday morning or something.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I mean, we knew when we saw the designs, and we knew when we started showing the figures around that they were going to be popular, just because they were so different and they were so cool looking. And when we introduced them as one piece models, people kind of lost their minds. And you just get them and you look at them now, and now that we have production models in our hands, and we're looking at them, you can see just how beautifully detailed they are and how just flowing with energy and action they are. And they're just beautiful models. And what I'm really interested to know, and of course we really don't have a whole lot of way of knowing, is how many of them ended up in the hands of people who don't play a DGS game, but came by and just saw the banner, with these giant bird people staring at them. And how many people walked away with those models just because they're amazing looking models?
Yep. Oh, if you start seeing them in, Twitch streams and other places where people are painting them because they like the model and aren't necessarily someone who's playing the games, we'll be able to gather a little bit of data.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And
but
and folks, we want to hear from you guys. Those of you that were there that have the Azure models, or maybe you picked them up at your FLGS, or you mail ordered them from the website. We'd love to hear from you about what you think of those Azure models. So drop those comments if you would into our All Things Phelan or on the Sleeping Grush channel, and tell us about your kind of first reaction to those, because we'd really like to know that. We saw firsthand at the event how people reacted to those, and we were really encouraged by that, but we also want to hear and see your reactions too.
so Matt mentioned also that the tournament was a big draw. There were people commenting on it. 16 tables, 32 players for a company our size is atypical. So we are pleased to have a community that allows us to play. The first time we asked for a lot of tables for our tournament, our good friends at Adepticon were, "Are you sure? We're kind of short on space," and they are. They're managing a lot of floor space, a lot of different great games. But we have come through with what we've said we're going to do, and we're going to ask for even more next year. But in addition to, even before the tournament was Saturday, so we had crazy things going on Thursday and Friday too. Let's hear about that.
Yeah, so we did. We had a really interesting lineup this time, and we changed our schedule specifically to allow more people into our tables early on, so that they could find their way back to the booth, go check out the models after they'd taken a demo. So what we did is we had 4 demos running at a time, and then we also had an encounters game running concurrently with that. So that proved immensely popular. Um, we had a ton of people taking demos. We had a ton of people playing the encounters, and we also had a huge amount of people doing walk-up demos. That was a big thing for us this time. There's a lot of people doing walk-up demos. They saw the game, they saw the terrain, which was a huge thing, and they just come, jumping right in, and they got a game with us. And I know we picked up quite a few players um, from that from that kind of a situation.
Yeah, so and the Encounters games both put on by us and games put on by some of our community, right?
Yeah, we had both. We had an interesting mix. So we had 2 encounters games that were official encounters games that ran in our time slots, and one of those was run by Chris Smith, and one of those was run by Jacob Metzinger, and they both did a fantastic job. They were both new to that sort of a game at a con. They both, of course, played in them here in Kansas City, but they both ran them for the first time at a con, and both their games went fantastically. But on top of that, we also had Art from Chicago and Casey from Pittsburgh that ran games. Casey ran them during our tournament. So if you couldn't spend all day during the tournament, but still wanted to to play in a Free Blades game, Casey ran a game, an amazing game with an amazing boss that I've been talking back and forth with him about, that looked really great. And Art ran his amazing barroom brawl at the Crying King, which is a con favorite, and just it's always such a hoot to watch them down there and all the craziness that goes on in that bar fight. Uh, so it was really fun to have. Oh, and we had also the twins, Kevin and Irvin Armitage, play their game, which they brought back from last year and added onto their amazing board, and then also ran a new encounters game on that board. So, and they ran that on Friday and Sunday, and I think, or no, 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 they ran it on Wednesday and Sunday, and Art ran his on Thursday or Friday, and then we had, of course, Casey run on Saturday. So every day there was a game being put on by one of our fans, one of our players, that wasn't associated with the official DGS schedule, and that worked out just wonderfully.
Yeah, so we have people that are taking demos that are learning the game. We have people who can pick up just sort of an open play game. We have people playing in these participation games, typically encounters because of the nature of a convention. I wanted to get a lot of people around the table mixing it up. So they
Yeah.
format supports that. So we had every kind of way the game gets played available to people, and it took Matt and Julie were leading teams. It amounted to 11 people, right? I mean, we brought 11 people
Yes.
to the event for the booths and the games. Yeah, so a
Yeah.
huge deal.
Yeah.
What
And
other
one of the
any
things,
other? Please. Oh, go
well,
ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
one of the other things that we did there that was kind of we did for the first time was we had a couple of tables that were reserved for people that just wanted to throw down and open play.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there's a huge open play area upstairs, but then like we had two different groups of people that took a demo and then wanted to play another full game just to get it under their belts. And we gave them the space and we gave
Right.
them the troops to do it, and that allowed them to, to do that. Um, as far as other highlights are concerned, I mean, there's so many. We had things that went on after con hours, obviously. There's always the grudge match between the US and Canada that went down, and that happens on Thursday nights. And there were some other games that went on. We took everybody out to
No,
eat
we need to.
Saturday night.
Matt,
Go
we need
ahead.
to take the grudge game. Sorry to interrupt, but one thing of it, we need to take the grudge game. Yeah, I think it would be okay if we scheduled a second event for Thursday night because I'm not seeing where that's lasting that long, right? I mean,
Well, it
it's
started about 6 o'clock, and it went maybe an hour and a half or so because we didn't end up getting home
okay.
until almost 9 o'clock. But
All right.
I think that we could probably put in another encounters game during that time or something. But I'd want to talk to the volunteer crew before we did that because
Sure.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. One of the things that I've got to say and should have said up front is that our volunteer crew that went out with us were just freaking amazing. They nailed it time and time again, getting people interested in the game, keeping their energy and just up, all the time, which is tough. A guy like me that's more introverted, after a couple of hours, I'm going to go hide in a corner and regroup. But these guys, their battery was just charged all day. And while I wasn't in the booth or around the booth a lot because of my duties over at the game tables, I know that those guys just, are constantly moving. And as busy as we were, they were working hard. So, to our volunteers that came out with us this time, I cannot say thank you enough for the amazing work that you did and the enthusiasm. And honestly, just your work is what builds our community at these events. So, just thank you, thank you, thank you.
I got the sense, like I said, I wasn't there, but my sense was in talking to people during the event and after that there was a higher level of being smoked back at the Airbnb than we've experienced in the past. The DGS team, rather than get a block of hotel rooms, we typically get an Airbnb at the location and fold back into it at the end of the day when all the events are complete. Roll back in, but there's typically some kind of hangout. Maybe watch a movie, maybe alcohol, typically, um, and maybe some painting, right? Or
Yeah.
all those combined. And I got the sense maybe less so, and that explains the going back Saturday and not casting because everybody just crashed. So I had to. I think my role the next time I am able to attend, I go back next year, is I'm going to do the the scene, the barracks scene from Full Metal Jacket to get these people back on their feet. Go back into the Airbnb. There's something supposed to be happening. Oh no! And she's okay. I'll be the Irving character, right? With the twist and everything.
we
So
it was interesting because Thursday we got back about 9 o'clock or so, and there was a little painting that went on. I did a little painting personally, and there were drinks flowing. There's no doubt about it. In fact, uh, you know there we have certain amazing individuals that will come and gift a bottle of something very nice to us at these events, and by Friday, the first one had been put down. So, yeah, I mean, there was plenty of that, but we were definitely more tired this time than we ever had been, just because we were moving so hard.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's going on? And that rolls into we're going to we've taken lessons learned from this and other events and rolled that into every time we go to make a convention schedule. And we'll be talking about it here in a minute for the next one. Take those lessons and And not just how to, not to make it easier on ourselves. So the last thing we're going to do, but to to watch how the players react to certain changes. What times for these things work best? How long should they last? What kind of event should be matched up with? What kind of time slots during the week? And so we learn a lot, and we try to take it into account when we plan the next one. And we'll have to do the same thing for ourselves if we want to get a Gen Con podcast in. So
Yeah, definitely. And, we're going to be talking about that in the coming weeks. We already have our AAR set up on site, and I've got a couple of ideas that for just from things that I had watched. I think that our new schedule put more people around the table total and allowed people to not just play and then go over to the tables, but our volunteer crew also to kind of wander through the vendor hall after they were finished at the demo tables, which was really nice too. Because as busy as we were, we didn't have as many breaks as we did in years past.
right. So and we did, we talked about the tournament a couple times. What I'd like to do there, Matt, what I'd like to suggest to you is that we get Brandon, our winner, and interview him on the podcast to talk about the tournament specifically.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
Rather, the two of us do it because you were supervising the thing and I wasn't even there. So I'd rather have the experience of somebody who played all the games and did all the things, tell us what their impression was. People I know that attend Adepticon who aren't necessarily, big time BGS games players. I have friends with bad life choices. What can I say? But
Sure.
everybody was impressed walking by that area in terms of the quality of the terrain, how well the players were getting along, um, the nature of the games, etc. But so we're going to move on from Adepticon and we're going to start talking about the future.
Yeah, we it's funny because uh, around the first of the year, we just kind of put our heads down and we start just moving towards Adepticon, and we focus on Adepticon. And we had a couple of podcasts that were, basically about what was coming up at Adepticon. And now we're past Adepticon, and we started to kind of clear out all of the administrative stuff that comes with that. And it's time to start looking towards the future again. And so our next big con is Gen Con. And tell us a little bit about what we have in store at Gen Con, John.
Well, it's a similar schedule in a way to what we just did. Gen Con, of course, is different than Adepticon. Adepticon is 8,000 people, but all of them are fantasy and science fiction miniatures gamers for the most part. There's a pretty sizable historical component there too, but often there's a lot of dual interest. People are playing a story, are also interested in um, some of the things that are more like what we do. At Gen Con, it's 70,000 plus people that are all over the game space in terms of what their interests are. Art, books, cosplay, cards, board games, miniatures games, video games, whatever. They're into all kinds of things. And so as a proportion of the number of people that attend, the miniatures gamer that buys a miniatures game and makes their own, models their own model, or if they're single piece, just paints it right up from scratch. Um, those are in the minority. That's not what Gen Con is mostly about. It's mostly about a lot of other things. So obviously we're there to draw people into our world from outside it as much as we are to do anything else. So the demos and showing the game off for the aspects of the game that are going to appeal more to a role player, because there's a lot of role players, Gen Con, um, is a higher emphasis than it is for like the tournament, for example. So as an example of the kind of change we made over the course of our history of going to Gen Con, just naturally we put the tournament on Saturday, and we have a tradition of a larger tournament cut. We play 3 or 4 rounds, and then cut to a number for the next day, so we don't have everybody has to come back for 2 days and have to commit all that time to one event. People want more flexibility in their schedule, and what we learned is, the tournament is fun. A lot of players play it. A lot of the players in it are people we brought with us. It's not as big as the one at Adepticon by far, because the emphasis is on bringing these other folks in. We gave ourselves a whole nother day to do demos and event games by putting the tournament on Sunday. And so
Right.
Sunday morning is a 3-round tournament for those guys, those players who want to come in and have a competitive, game, and something for the volunteers to do the community. I like to jump in to the tournament, so we give off from having to put on games to be able to play. And I appreciate this. I don't get to play anywhere near enough compared to what I'd like to be doing, so I certainly am sympathetic. So the schedule is set to put on a lot of encounters games and demos um, throughout Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and have those end generally by 5 p.m. so that the players still have an hour before the huge and amazing vendor hall closes to go back to the booth and make any purchases based on what they just, what their experience just was when they were out on the floor.
Mhm.
So 17 events. And in fact, Matt doesn't know this because I just learned this afternoon. All of ours were approved today. We have a process where we submit events to the con staff. And we're just waiting on the locations.
That's fantastic to hear.
Yeah. So now we got everything we wanted. It's the largest Gen Con schedule. And we say a lot of superlatives, like Adepticon was the best con we've ever had. Adepticon 24. Well, that's not good enough. We want Gen Con 24 to be the best con we've ever had, so we're never going to sit in our laurels and go, that was great. Let's just do the same thing over again. Now we're always going to look to um, make some kind of change, do something different.
Absolutely. And, we want to give as many people as we can the opportunity to experience our fantastic world. And we've been moving around our schedule to do that. And we've been playing different games and trying different things. And I think we're really on the right path from what the numbers and the feedback and the experience has shown us.
Yep, I would say so. And people have heard us talk about before. We are going to get into the board game business and add that into our repertoire. We've got a couple working in the background. And so once that's true, we'll be more aligned with the type of attendee at Gen Con. But with that comes a big expansion in, who we have to bring and how many tables we put in play. And, talking to Julie about expanding the booth size, in a zero-sum game world of the Gen Con vendor area. There's always a couple of hundred people on the wait list. We're just happy to be in there,
Yeah.
very, very
Yeah.
grateful. But changes are coming. And but the schedule will be, I want to say, I'm going to get this wrong. The event schedule is live May 19th. I might have for Gen Con. I don't remember what the exact date is, but our part is chunky along just fine in terms of um, event games, demos, and a smaller tournament on Sunday.
Yeah, so if you're looking to come to Gen Con, number one, do it. It's an amazing, amazing adventure, the whole thing. But we're going to have a ton of really fun games that you can get in on. So, make sure that if you're going to Gen Con, take a look for the Free Blades schedule and jump into some of those games because we'd love to have you. Now, John, we're kind of running out of time, but I want to just hit on the fact that we are coming up on. I know we just released the Azura, and that we're still basking in that glow, but we have another release that's on the way for mid-July, and I know that seems like it's kind of a long way out, but it's really not.
Yeah, it might be some other people, but it's not to us.
That's
Right.
right.
So how much are we saying? How much am I gonna, get anybody up in arms and we start talking
Don't
about what some of these balls are?
don't dip your toe in those waters just yet, John.
Okay. They're
But
all awesome.
they are all awesome. We're starting to see the not just the renders, but the masters come back on those, and they are phenomenal. They're beautiful. You're gonna love them just as much as you love the Azura.
Yeah,
So
across all the factions,
yes,
including some Azura in there to expand the factions. Right now, it's just the 6 models in the starter set, so they get immediate attention because we want people to be able to make a varied, free band when they go to play their Azura games as
right,
quickly as possible. So,
absolutely. So last but definitely not least, before we get off air here, let's talk about the upcoming Kickstarter because it is. We've been talking about it for a little while, but it's starting to become.
okay. So the Kickstarter is going to be called the Ankala Oracle. We are doing something that we have both done many times and never done. This will be our ninth Kickstarter. The other eight were either a faction or a group of models the same size as the kickoff faction, or the Dragonsaur. This is cards. The premier reward or the goal of the campaign is a 54 card Oracle deck that is essentially the Phelan Tarot. Um, a set of cards like in a way and structure the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck everybody knows and loves. The major arcana and the cups and the pentacles and the swords and the wands, but tied to Phelan, not tied to Earth. And so custom built for and fitting into the story of the world of Phelan, specifically the Ankala people, who are the diaspora that survives the downfall of the Crygen Empire, the progenitor to the Trazerite Empire. The Trazerite people rebel against the Crygen Empire and take it over. And the Ankala are those Crygen loyalists who have to escape death by scattering themselves across both continents. And the deck tells their story if in a way the cards are threaded together, but also each individual card. Beautiful art by Neo Mendoza, just stunning.
Gorgeous art.
No part of the Kickstarter relying on generative AI. Both the divinatory meanings of each card and the story of the cards and the illustrations, none of that done by anything but an outstanding person. Neo Mendoza, in the case of the illustrations, and K.R. Gostreich, our writing partner, when it comes to the story and the divinatory meaning. So you have a card deck, and the original idea came from my experience as a game master in Phelan, when my players wanted to do some interaction with a fortune teller. How do you, as a game master, and you play the role of the fortune teller, how do you play that out? You have your rune stones, chicken bones, a magic 8 ball. I guess you could do that. I had a standard tarot deck and learned it. I'm not an expert by any means. I mean, totally amateur, but I learned enough to be able to use that to, um, provide divinatory answers to the party when they encountered and interacted with a fortune teller. And it just constantly nagged at me that this is not based on Phelan. This is got no relation to Phelan. And so that's the core of the project. You would purchase or you would back the project. Your primary reward would be this beautifully illustrated tarot deck. But while we were working on that, the art is so beautiful. We asked Neo to kind of capture a lot of the pieces of that art, and we're going to do a separate 54 card standard size, not tarot size, standard size card deck of magic items. 36 magic items, 9 artifacts, and 9 greater artifacts, fully playable in both Free Blades and Brightsword, that are linked to the Ankala story as well. Because in our world, the primary conduit for magic items entering the world is the Ankala people. The reason for that is, in this story that you're going to learn about as the Kickstarter progresses. And then there's more. Um, when we were also as an experience as a game master, your characters, your adventurers, your players, often will end up in some kind of tavern setting or some other communal location where gambling is occurring. And what do you play? Do you play craps? Do you play cards? Texas Hold'em. What's the game that you play? We made up a short dice game that we used for a long time. It's kind of got a place in Phelan. But I had made up a card game also tied to this story, that tweaks the Oracle a bit to make it a playing card game, which is actually the origin of the original tarot, Earth-based tarot, our tarot, uh, human history of tarot. And so there's a playing card deck, 54 cards linked to, but not exactly the same as the 54 cards in the Oracle that are playable as a gambling game. So that when your players fall back in on that tavern, or they're, negotiating with some group of NPCs, and we're going to do it over some game of chance, you'll be able to play out a game of chance completely tied to the world of Famelon. And all three card decks are going to be created as part of the Kickstarter, and will be rewards um, in the Kickstarter. So you can just get yourself the Ankala Oracle, or the Magic Item deck, or the Three Gestures card deck, the playing card deck, or some combination, or there's a reward where you get all three for, a discount for a little less money than buying them or having them as rewards together. And we're very excited about it. The work with the printer is also going to lead us to do some things with, um, that same company later on. We're going to learn some lessons, develop some relationships. This is an aside to do future other card type products and board games eventually. So it's kind of a kickoff point for that as well. But we're very, very excited about this project because everybody who's seen Neo's illustrations has gone wild for them. And the fact that you have this, a representation of our world done in such a stunning manner, we think is going to make this a very popular thing.
Yeah, I agree. And everybody that I show them to, both here at Kansas City and then again at Adepticon, just the art was just they just swooned over it. It was incredible. And when I told them about the entire project, they were really excited because it's something new and something fresh that we're doing, and a way to explore Phelan that we've not seen before. So we're very excited about this project.
And I've been actually, Matt, taking some notes. I think that if we're really successful, one of our stretch goals will be to produce a role-playing adventure that uses the Oracle deck to tell its narrative.
I
You
think
know,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
I got some ideas about that. I've been jotting them down because we get far enough along. I think that we'll be able to, provide the time and resources to make that a thing as well.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. Well, we're over time a little bit here, so folks, we really appreciate you listening. We're sorry we went away for a little while, but we're back now. And leave any comments in the Sleeping Grush podcast channel on Discord, or contact us on Facebook. Either way, we are open and we'll be happy to talk with you about things that go on here. Leave your comments, things you'd like to see. As always, we really, really appreciate each and every one of you. You are what makes this community so amazing. So until next time, we'll see you around the table.
And Sil Sakava.